You're someone who feels everything deeply. You care, you give, you heal others naturally. Then you meet someone who seems to need you desperately, a narcissist. What happens when your natural empathy collides with their darkness? Does it break you completely, or does something unexpected happen instead? Carl Jung, one of psychology's greatest minds, believed that our deepest growth doesn't come from staying comfortable in the light. It comes from facing the shadows. And here's what's fascinating. Modern psychology is proving him right. When empaths survive narcissistic abuse, they don't just heal, they transform into something entirely new. Today, we're going to explore this incredible journey of transformation and why Jung called it individuation, becoming your true self. The shadow absorption phase. Let's start with what Jung meant by the shadow. Think of it as a psychological garbage bag. Everything someone refuses to acknowledge about themselves gets stuffed in there. The shame, the rage, the emptiness, the fear. Now, when a narcissist enters an empath's life, something terrible and fascinating happens. The narcissist can't handle their own emotional garbage, so they dump it all on the empath. And empaths, with their naturally absorbing nature, take it all in. They start carrying emotions that aren't even theirs. Modern research by Judith Herman shows us that abuse victims often internalize their abuser's feelings as if they belong to them all along. Dr. Elaine Aron's work on highly sensitive people explains why this happens so easily. Empaths process emotional information more deeply than most people. They're like emotional sponges, which makes them perfect targets for someone looking to offload their psychological baggage. But here's where it gets really intense. The empath doesn't just absorb a little bit of darkness. They become a container for all of it. Their own identity starts to blur and fade. They lose track of where the narcissist's emotions end and theirs begin. The descent into chaos. This is where Jung's concept of the nigredo comes in. It's an alchemical term meaning blackening, where everything solid dissolves into chaos. For the empath, this feels like psychological death. Imagine waking up one day and not recognizing yourself in the mirror. The person who used to be the helper, the rescuer, the one everyone came to for support, that person seems to have vanished. What's left behind is terrifying emptiness. Survivors describe this as living inside a maze with no exit. Nothing feels solid anymore. Your emotions swing wildly without warning. Relationships that once felt stable now seem fragile. Even your sense of time gets warped. You might lose hours, or minutes might feel like years. Jung called this the night sea journey, that archetypal story where the hero gets swallowed by a whale or monster and has to navigate complete darkness. Your old map of reality doesn't work anymore. Clinical psychology has a term for this too: identity diffusion. It sounds fancy, but it basically means you're falling apart, and that's exactly what needs to happen. This isn't just emotional. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's groundbreaking work shows us that trauma literally rewrites your nervous system. Your body keeps score of every manipulation, every cruel word, every moment you disappeared to keep the peace. Hypervigilance becomes your default setting. Anxiety lives in your bones. Sometimes, your body even gets sick from carrying all this pain. Jung understood this as ego death, the complete breakdown of the false self you built to survive. For empaths, that false self was often built on endless giving, on being whatever others needed them to be. The awakening of shadow immunity. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. Just when it seems like the empath has been completely destroyed, something powerful starts to happen. The psyche begins to fight back. Jung observed that knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Survivors describe experiencing a quiet but fierce refusal. They stop explaining themselves constantly. They stop carrying emotions that were never theirs to begin with. They stop apologizing for existing. This is what I call shadow immunity, like your psychological immune system developing antibodies against manipulation. And it's not just a metaphor. Neuroscience research on trauma resilience shows that surviving repeated manipulation actually trains your brain's alarm system to detect danger patterns before your conscious mind even notices them. Suddenly, empaths develop this incredible intuitive clarity. That gut feeling that warns you when something's off becomes razor sharp. What once overwhelmed them now becomes readable, like finally learning to speak a language you've been hearing your whole life. The empath emerges not just more careful, but more attuned to truth itself. They can sense manipulation from across the room. They know when someone is projecting their garbage. They recognize love bombing, gaslighting, and triangulation like reading street signs. The journey toward individuation. From this point, something beautiful begins. The journey shifts from just surviving to actually thriving. Jung called this process individuation, becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious. For the empath, this means a radical transformation. They're no longer an unconscious sponge, soaking up everyone else's emotions. They become a conscious container, someone who can feel deeply but chooses what they carry. Modern psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. Researchers like Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun have documented how people who survive profound adversity often develop deeper resilience, clearer values, and unshakable boundaries. They don't just bounce back, they bounce forward into someone stronger. The transformed empath no longer absorbs darkness passively. When they encounter manipulation or projection, they meet it with awareness rather than absorption. Their very presence becomes disruptive to unconscious patterns. Jung described how a more conscious person can shake up the whole dynamic around them. The narcissist assigned the empath a role: victim, supply source, emotional dumping ground. But the individual empath refuses to play that part anymore. Instead, they become like a mirror, reflecting back truth and forcing others to face what they've been avoiding. The price of transformation. But this transformation comes with a cost that Jung understood deeply. There's a new kind of loneliness that comes with consciousness. As Jung wrote, loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. The individual empath often feels separated from people who remain unconscious. Old friendships dissolve because they no longer fit the new self. Family dynamics shift because the empath won't play their assigned role anymore. Dating becomes challenging because they can see through surface charm to the shadow beneath. But here's the crucial difference. This isn't the desperate loneliness of abandonment. This is the solitude of authenticity. Modern trauma therapists call this recovery of agency, choosing to be alone rather than staying in relationships built on lies, projection, and control. The empath learns that being alone is not the same as being lonely. Solitude becomes sacred space for the true self to breathe and grow. The birth of the shadow walker. In the final stage of this transformation, something extraordinary emerges. Jung called it the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to create something entirely new from opposing forces. What comes out isn't the naive giver who first encountered the narcissist. It's someone completely different, what I call a shadow walker. The shadow walker isn't hardened or closed off. They still feel deeply, maybe even more deeply than before. But they're no longer consumed by those feelings. They can sit with someone's pain without losing themselves in it. They can offer genuine empathy while maintaining boundaries that aren't negotiable rules but lived realities. Their sensitivity becomes their superpower, paired with strength that can't be shaken. They've walked through the valley of the shadow and come out the other side luminous. Not despite the darkness they endured, but because of it. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The narcissist thought they were destroying the empath. In reality, they became the unwitting catalyst for the empath's evolution into their truest, most powerful self. So here's the beautiful irony. The narcissist's attempt to break the empath actually forged them into something unbreakable. The empath emerges sovereign, luminous and wise, not in spite of their journey through darkness, but because of it. This isn't just recovery. This is transformation. From unconscious shadow container to conscious shadow walker, embodying the truth, Jung spent his life exploring that consciousness evolves through conflict, and even our darkest trials can reveal the indestructible core of who we really are. What's your experience with this journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more explorations into psychology, transformation, and the profound insights of Carl Jung.